Chris, you have been over at Leica for quite a while, actually, right from the start of Coraline.
6 years.
And you had up the storyboard on Coraline. And at what point did you kind of start pitching in this project here? Because you wrote Paranorman, didn't you?
I did. It was towards the end of Coraline. I'd been working on Paranorman on and off for about 10 years, maybe longer. Not all the time, just, I'd occasionally go back to it. And towards the end, I had the first 30 pages written up, and I showed it to Henry Selick, expecting him to give me, criticism and say, work on this, work on that. And he actually just said, I think we should show it to Travis Knight, who is the CEO of Leica and a lead animator. And we showed it to him, and he said, yeah, let's do it. He said, where's the rest, actually? And I said, oh, it's at home. And it wasn't. So I spent the next 3 or 4 weeks going home at night and furiously typing up the rest.
And I know that obviously whatever is the original script is usually very different by the time it's the film, but is it possible to kind of guess how much of the original script is actually on screen?
A lot of it, actually.
Yeah, I'd say a lot, Yeah, it's sort of reordered and polished and tightened, and some things made clearer.
I knew what I was doing.
Yeah, he did. Yeah. Yeah.
They obviously believe you.
Yeah. And Chris rewrote, or just kept tightening and writing all the way through the first year while we were storyboarding and even when we were recording, actually.
Yeah.
So while Coraline was being made, you were here with the Tale of Despereaux.
Yeah, that's right.
Having done Flushed Away before that.
Yeah.
So what point did you come and join the Leica family, so to speak?
That was the summer of 2009. I'd finished Despereaux, and I had a few things in development, and I was fishing around, and we had a mutual friend, Claire Jennings, who invited me to come over and just check out Leica, and I was really excited because I'd seen Coraline, and I thought that was it was a really extraordinary project, actually, very unusual to be able to pull something like that off. And that's when we met, in 2009. And we spent quite a few months together, all the way through 2009, just figuring out a relationship.
And you didn't know each other previously?
No. We worked on the same movie, but at different times.
Yeah. I mean, that's in a sense, it's quite, when somebody's written a piece, I guess there's a certain kind of, from a hierarchy point of view, you might have thought that the person who's written it might kind of hold the sort of the hand, but I guess if you've had the directing experience, maybe, so I guess that kind of evens it out, does it?
Are you asking if I fought him at all when he first came on?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes, I did. Every day.
Yeah.
No.
It was a sort of a figuring out thing. Yeah, you're right. There was I bought something, Chris had the heart of it, and I knew that there's no point, because I liked it, the script, there'd be no point trying to turn in something else.
And how did it work in terms of the directing relationship? Because it's a massive project, particularly animation, where you've got all these different bits going on in the studio, and I guess there's voices being done and music being done.
Yeah.
Did you kind of divide responsibilities, or how over it were you? How did that work?
Well, we spent so much time together, we didn't split up, actually. We were like a team, like a pair, and we spent probably 4 or 5 months figuring out what the singular director's vision would be for the movie, what the cinematography, the editing, the colour, every single aspect of the film would be, and how that would support the story and really speak to the story. And so we were joined at the hip, really, for the first year and a half.
It's quite often to have multiple directors on animated movies, but you can, I think, tell the movies where they have split up duties because they become slightly disjointed. Not going to mention any names, but I know a few movies where you can see a different voice running through, and we really didn't want that from the beginning.
And a lot of animated movies, they just go through directors like nobody's business. Like they're on for a year and they get fired and they bring in some other directors, and everyone. Same with writers, to be honest. Many writers work on an animated, and then storyboard artists are writing and. So this was different in that way. I think what I like about this project is that it had there's an original voice to it. And
mine.
It is. You know what I mean? It's important. It sort of I think then it feels real. It has a soul. Like a movie.
It feels very. Whereas if you watch an Aardman film, it feels very British. This feels very American, and actually, both of you are British. And I know that you have immersed yourself in kind of American culture and film stuff, but nevertheless, it does feel very American.
I think everyone in this country, certainly of my age, grew up on American popular culture. It isn't a huge leap, I don't think. If I think of the movies that influenced this when I was growing up, it was The Goonies, it was Ghostbusters, Poltergeist, E.T., it was Scooby-Doo. All of those are American. Now, a lot of the movies that I watched when I was a kid were American. And also the mythology of the story was uniquely American. I think the Massachusetts thing, I wanted it to be rooted in something that was at least, it was real. And the witch hunts were real. So it was never intended to be anything other than an American story.
Was there anything that you had to tone down to get to the right level, or was that pretty much as it was again?
No, I mean, it was something that we talked about every day. It's that balance of scary and not, and we never wanted it to be condescending. We never wanted it to be the kind of animated movie that talks above kids' heads. So we were quite wary of having gags that were specifically made for adults. There are a few in there, but funnily enough, they actually work on a couple of levels. Like, for example, Neil in the hockey mask. Yeah, you see, people like it. It works on one level for people who know, Jason. But kids look at Neil in the hockey mask and they just laugh. So
it's probably the other way around. It's probably the kids saying Jason, isn't it?
Probably, yeah.
And in terms of the look of it, the style of it, obviously Coraline was made was a previous film and had a very particular look and a very particular kind of like the models all looked particular. And you have gone for a change in that respect. I mean, were you very conscious not to make it too kind of Coraline-esque in a sense?
Yeah, we didn't want to be like Coraline. Neither did we want to be in Tim Burton's neighbourhood either. So a lot of it, I thought coming to it was already, there was clues in the script already, because I think the script was quite live-action-y, and you probably could make this film as a live-action movie. And a lot of the references were, John Carpenter, John Hughes, they were all live-action directors. So I thought that was a great clue, and especially Stop Frame is actually like live-action in miniature. So we really decided to shoot this much more like a live-action movie and not do what Henry does, which I think is quite theatrical, almost like everything that informs Henry's, his acting is quite broad and theatrical, and is a little bit, his camera sits back a bit from the action, and we really wanted to get in there and make a big screen cinematic kind of thing.
In terms of, obviously the voice cast worked incredibly well. Were you both kind of very intimately involved in the casting of the voices, and did you have people in your mind who ended up doing it, and are they the people who you'd originally envisaged? Yeah,
I think our approach to it was slightly different in that we really didn't want to go for gimmick casting. We weren't creating characters based on a celebrity persona. We actually had the characters on the page, first of all, and then we also had the designs done before we started casting. So then it was a matter of finding the right voice. And our approach overall was to find a naturalism to the performances. So we wanted kids to play the central kids. We knew we wanted Norman to be an authentic 11-year-old, so we would, and it's a complex character. It's quite sophisticated. He has vulnerability, but he's got a comedic touch. We saw Cody Smith-McPhee, age 9, in The Road, holding his own with Viggo Mortensen on screen, and we thought, okay, we've got Norman. And we were lucky enough to find Tucker to support that. So we knew we had those central kids roles. Alvin, I think it was okay to cast Alvin as an adult, because we kind of figured he'd been held back in school so much that he could be 25. But that was our approach, was to find the right voice for a character that already existed. And it enabled us to kind of play around with that as well. We did a lot of stuff that was very much against type. Again, Christopher Mintz-Plasse playing a bully is unusual. Elaine Stritch playing a dear grandma. Her scenes with Norman could have been overly sentimental or maybe a bit saccharine, but you put Elaine Stritch voice in there, and it's a character who smokes 40 a day and swears like a sailor, and instantly there's a history to that character that takes it away, makes it more real, more believable.
I mean, it's very clear there's a lot of time spent, obviously, in terms of getting the story right, and in terms of, really sort of thinking through the whole kind of, the whole thing as like the outsider's point of view, about because Norman is the outsider, but also, the witch later on, the little girl, and obviously you sort of followed all those sort of themes through. So it's very different, I think, than a lot of sort of the sort of animated fodder that is kind of out there.
Yeah.
I mean, were there any concerns, though, having said that, from the studio's point of view, in terms of did they want you to kind of dumb it down a bit more and make it a bit more kind of...
No, they weren't like that at all. It's funny. they're quite out on their own, being up in Oregon. They seem quite away from it all. And I must admit, coming to it, I was thinking that because my experience is that, stuff usually does have to adjust, or someone has a problem somewhere, and you have to kind of do the politics thing and, placate. But that didn't happen. But yeah, I think I always thought it was unusual because it's kind of really comic, and in a way it's a comedy. But then I actually think it's a drama, really. Like the third act is just incredibly dramatic, but not a peep.
And in terms of the obviously it's stop motion animation, so you're using lots of people and it's very labour intensive. But you're also using some computers for some effects as well. Was it you wanted to use that only if you really, really had to, or were you quite relaxed and late, and were you quite happy to use a computer and to use that wherever you felt it was appropriate?
We always consider ourselves Luddites who've embraced the loom, in that we are quite willing to use anything if it makes the final image on screen look better. I mean, it is a stop-motion movie, so everything starts from that place. I think pretty much every scene in the movie has a puppet in it. Like, as an example, the climactic scene with Aggie, she's a puppet. And, what we wanted, I think, from that was to do something that you hadn't quite seen before. And I think there is an element when you look at that is, you think, is that CG? Is it a puppet? What is it? And it's a combination of 2D, stop motion, and CG. And I think what we wanted to do was open the world up. Traditionally, stop motion can feel quite constrained, quite enclosed, and that's because of the nature of the medium. You're limited at the size of your sets, how many puppets you can have, how many puppets an animator can animate. So what we wanted to do was kind of push those boundaries. I've worked on a lot of stop motion movies, I hate when you have a scene that says, busy town centre, and it's like 4 puppets. It kind of kills it. So we wanted to push that and really make it feel like a wide world. I think that was the most challenging thing, was the scale of the thing, the scope of it.
But it was all designed from the production designer. So if we were going to do an effect like the storm and that big face in the sky, initially that was built out of like tool in the studio and like rigged to move a little bit, and Tristan and Oliver lit it and we photographed it. So we knew every time we were going to go to the computer, we'd already done a stop frame version of it.
Obviously, there are a finite number of people who can, sort of stop motion, animate in a stop motion fashion. And obviously, this year, or over the last few years, there's been Pirates and Frankenweenie in your production. Did that mean that people were having to kind of jump ship a little bit?
Yeah, there was a bit of competition, actually.
Yeah, and we had to bring people up, which was, I think is always exciting. We had to find probably 10 people that really had to raise their game, that hadn't worked on features. I mean, we had a kid who'd made a film in his bedroom that looked promising.
He was cheap.
It was cheap and very enthusiastic.
Cheaper than directors.
Yeah, and
we actually lied to them. We said, this is the standard we expect, and it was a higher standard than anyone has ever been expected to produce before. But the new guys didn't know that.
I didn't know. They were like, oh, okay, yeah, we better, because
and they achieved it.
Yeah.